Okay, welcome to our talk, Thinking Outside the Box, Developing Key Skills of Future Learning Disability Nurses Through Engagement in a Digital Escape Room. We are all learning disability nurses, and I'm Samantha Salmon, Senior Lecturer, and I used to work in a short break service for adults with a learning disability before joining Birmingham City University in 2017.
My name's Vicky Moloney. I'm a lecturer at the university. I joined BCU in 2022, having come from an NHS trust where I was named nurse for children in care, and my other experience is working with children with learning disabilities out in the community setting.
And my name is Ruth Hirst. I'm also a lecturer at the university. I joined in 2022. Prior to that, I've worked in inpatient and community services for adults with learning disabilities. Okay, so obviously myself, Vicky and Sam, we are part of a wider team, the Learning Disability Nursing team here at BCU. We teach all fields of nursing, but we also, in some capacity, lead or teach on modules for learning disability nursing students. And as we've mentioned, we are all learning disability nurses, and we thought just kind of summing it up in a bit of a nutshell about what a learning disability nurse does. And we found a lovely quote from the Royal College of Nursing in Northern Ireland. And they say that the learning disability nurse empowers and enables people with a learning disability to live inclusive and fulfilling lives within their local community. And that the learning disability nurse works in partnership with people with learning disability and their families, carers, to support each person to optimise their health and well-being throughout their lives. And we will explain why this really lends itself nicely in the work that we've done creating digital escape rooms, and how that's really empowered not only students but staff as well in developing these resources.
Okay, so to introduce the work that we've done, this was born out of COVID, where overnight all of us had to respond to changes to teaching to include online delivery. And this happened for everybody in education. But what was unique about Birmingham City University and other nursing institutions is that this was alongside curriculums being built because of changes to the Nursing and Midwifery Council, but also we recognised that there were new staff within the team as well. So there was a lot of change and a lot to get our heads around in this newer way of working. So you can see from the literature, we looked to this to develop leadership, communication, teamwork. We recognised that gamification was more popular. Students were feeling quizzed out. We wanted to do something different that was creative. And also something that offered flexibility, that was motivating and stimulating, and enabled students to not experience any negative side effects while they were having these experiences. So the development and implementation of digital escape rooms led to an improvement of staff and student competence and confidence in these participative digital pedagogies that centred around the escape rooms. So our approach was recognised, shortlisted and presented at conferences, which we'll talk a little bit about later. But this really hinged on a leadership module in the third year. And this was created by the learning disability nurse lecturers, which is reflective of our leadership problem solving, and enabled students to understand things that were very nuanced to that module, and also prepared them for future employment in an authentic way. So all of this evidence, we interpreted it and applied it to the development of the escape room, and it's been really vindicating to see this theory come to life in the classroom. And Vicky will explain a little bit more why this lent itself well to that module.
So This was introduced within the leadership and decision making module, which is a third year module on the nursing course. And that module works a lot with problem-based learning model. So it really lent itself well to the fact that we were presenting students with a problem that they needed to solve and giving them instructions on how they would carry that out. So it really did align itself to that creating links between theory and practice, and also drawing on their own experiences and skills and knowledge that they'd learned out in practice, and getting them to justify their reasoning as to how they would approach a problem, giving a rationale as to why they would approach it in that way, and their reasoning for how they would use their skills to solve it. So it really lent itself well to this module. But what we also wanted to do was allow them to give us some feedback at the end of the sessions, a little bit of a debrief to understand their processes and if they would change their approach in future, because being leadership, one size doesn't fit all, and we have to be, again, adaptable and flexible to meeting needs. But we also wanted to, by introducing the digital escape rooms, make it fun. CAP in 2012 said about making learning fun and allowing that sense of ownership of their own knowledge. And I think this really helped the students to do that, kind of consolidated what they'd learned and got them to work in teams and communicate. But part of it is also about planning those processes, kind of testing out their theories and ideas and refining it. Same as how we created the digital escape rooms, but problem-based learning was certainly a really useful way to construct our digital escape room.
Okay, so just to take you through the aim and what we wanted to do, we wanted to be able to share good practice for how flipped learning and digital pedagogies can be embedded across a range of academics and different modules, so that we are achieving those good student outcomes, those good and positive experiences, and that engagement as well.
So initially, this started as in-person escape rooms, and these were developed for admissions, awareness, activities, and events. But we wanted to be able to do this digitally and use those tools in that background of the new curriculum being developed and putting in our alignment with NMC changes and platforms. So it was very much a supportive exercise. We all met regularly to develop the third year modules and support each other with these new ways of working. Beyond the learning disability nursing team, we were also supported by TELT, the technicians in education and learning, in early 2022, where they supported with a dedicated workshop around escape rooms, where they took our ideas, our creativity, our knowledge, but helped us to find a framework, so we were able to deliver that to students in a meaningful way, which will be talked about in the following slides as well, in our method section. So I'll hand over to Vicky.
So as Sam said, initially monthly meetings just as a learning disability team, and having those kind of planning around specific field modules, using coaching questions, and we applied peer pedagogy as well to draw out kind of areas of development where we could make things more interactive, more engaging for our students, because we were moving towards a more hybrid way of teaching and learning. But we also wanted to build and draw on areas of strength to our team confidence as well, because as we said, this was kind of new to us in terms of digital literacy. We looked at MOODLE and the use of H5P in order to develop our digital escape room. And as Sam said, we also worked with our technology enhanced learning and teaching technicians who advised about using that linear framework for us to follow. We wanted to ensure that in doing this digital escape room, it aligned to our NMC platforms, that it aligned to Bloom's taxonomy in developing their knowledge and skills. It aligned to learning outcomes and constructively aligned with the assessment or assignment briefs, particularly in the leadership module, but also further modules as we've developed our digital escape rooms. At conferences, we presented as we are to you today, but we also offered a stay and play so that we could offer our colleagues an opportunity to have hands-on experience of using our digital escape room, both on Moodle through our dedicated Moodle escape room page, but also in kind of hard copies as well, paper-based ones, so that they could use them paper-based, digitally, or a combination of the two, just to show how adaptable and flexible this method could actually be.
Okay, so looking at some of our results and findings and that impact that it's had on us as staff, but also students as well. So it's really had that positive impact on our confidence in our digital competence. And it's really enthused us to trial and develop other digital resources within our teaching. So, for example, that kind of bringing that gamification into the classroom. The impact it's had on students as well, we've had feedback from them that they've really enjoyed that kind of competitive and digital element within their learning. And that's been highly evaluated across our module evaluations. And this is something that's also now being shared with other student cohort groups and with lecturers from other fields across the course. And if we move on to the staff testimonials. So obviously, acknowledging kind of our team, our learning disability nursing team, and the background of our team, a lot of us have moved from those clinical roles where we have been able to kind of advance in that particular field in healthcare. Some of us have been in quite senior roles, so that kind of transition and that move to academia, it almost felt like we were starting almost at the bottom of the tree, being new to academia. But what we have done is we've been able to acknowledge our skills mix from practice, and as learning disability nurses, we are very adaptable. So we've been able to bring those skills and adapt to our new work environment and really start to build on our digital literacy and skills. There are kind of changes and that ever evolving changes in the digital world. So we're kind of moving along with that. And we've all been like really supportive and empowering each other through that change and so much change recently as well. As you can see, these are just some kind of staff testimonials from our team that have kind of demonstrate that actually our confidence has grown within our digital capability. As myself, since the creation of the digital escape room, it really influenced me with a real opportunity to be inventive and create innovative ideas and to embed that digital pedagogy through the module that I lead. So I've been really able to apply those creative skills and techniques to develop methods to encourage student engagement and learning through asynchronous sessions as well, and bring in an experience in different platforms. So as we've said, we've used H5P here, but also Microsoft Forms and using different platforms such as quizzes and Mentimeter as well. We've really been able to bring those interactive elements into our teaching. So that's just a little snapshot really of like how it's really kind of improved and given us that confidence in our digital capability really as a staff team.
Some of the feedback that we received from students around the escape room was actually, it was highlighted as one of the best features of the module. You can probably see that we had like 10 responses, and we do have smaller cohorts within learning disability. So actually that worked in our favour. It was a good way of being able to kind of check the digital escape room work and get that feedback on a smaller stage before rolling it out to larger cohorts. And what they did also say was that they didn't feel quizzed out, but it also helped to consolidate their learning as they were working in teams. It helped with their leadership styles, their communication, their kind of personal, interprofessional skills as well, which all realigned back to the assessment brief as well. When we brought it online, we did use MS Teams channels to support accessing digital materials and getting them to be able to work together in an online manner before it moved to an asynchronous, purely based on Moodle page. It does offer a more digital approach to learning, and actually our observations of some of the student groups is that we tend to have more mature students, so it's likely to be first generation students, may have come from more deprived areas and will have more caring responsibilities, and that it helped to build their digital literacy because some of them hadn't done these things before, and we needed to make sure it was accessible, that we did get their feedback so that we could develop it moving forward. And that again meant we had to make sure we were using clear, concise language and instructions, and helping them to understand the concept of an escape room, because for some people they'd never done that before. So these are all things we had to consider, but ultimately the feedback from students was positive. So how did we do it? We chose activities that were related to nursing and previous taught content, things that they were familiar with, so that had been in the assessment brief, such as Bloom's taxonomy. Thinking about the outcome of the task, so it was a code, an anagram, correct answer, and all of it was developed on H5P, and we're going to show you a video as to a bit of a snapshot as to what it looks like. So access it through Moodle, and we now have our own dedicated page to our escape room. There's a ribbon for each of the escape rooms, so we can actually house multiple ones on there. And we just give a bit of an introduction as to what we want them to do, welcoming them into the room. We give them step-by-step instructions, and this is how our linear digital escape room is broken down. The first task they needed to do for this digital escape room was putting the different key acts and legislation and reports into order from oldest to most recent. So this was a drag and drop exercise that we asked them to do. Click and drag and drop to where we think it should be. The next one gave them, again, it was a drag and drop, but they're looking at BSL and needed to spell out a word and get these images into the correct order as well. So really, really simple. We then put in a medication crossword. So these were all things that had been covered in different modules, and all they needed to do was find the one that they wanted to answer, click into the first box, and then just type on their keyboard, and it would put the answer in for them. As we mentioned before, Bloom's taxonomy is a big part of what we teach. So again, this was a drag and drop. This is probably the one that's most difficult for them to do, getting them in the correct orders. We then did a spot the hazard. So clicking onto the picture to then show where the hazards were. If they got it wrong, a little cross came up saying, no, it's not here. Try again elsewhere until they get it right. When they did get one right, as you can see, it would tell you which hotspot they found, and it would give you a letter which was linked to it. And once they collected all of them, they put it together to form a word. The final step was to have a look at a Bristol stool chart and to answer the question below. With all of them, you can put a check on it, and if it's correct, you get this little gold star button coming across at the bottom. What we did do for the students is get them to put all their answers onto a form in an order and send it to a member of staff at the end to check. And the team that did get it correct and in the fastest time often won a little prize like a pen or sweets, which was always gratefully received by the students.
Thank you, Vicky. So this was initially designed in response to the challenges, as we've talked about before, but we were also really mindful of this being a time where student engagement was really quite low. So it really was about that motivation, that engagement, but also that sense of belonging with a cohort of, in 2019, this cohort was, I think, 18 in a sea of about 500 nursing students, because they were taught core for so amongst all 4 fields for the first 2 years. So they all came together for the first time in this 3rd year module, and we were really, really mindful of that. It evaluated really highly. It was a good chance for them to get to know each other, to work with each other, to reflect on those communication skills. Who was it that stood up, took the lead? Who was it that liked the research? And we saw that with staff as well when we delivered it last year. Some people got really competitive and they were running around trying to get the answers from other groups, which is great to see. So it continues to evaluate highly. And as said before, we are just wanting to talk about this more, share our approach, our findings, and see what other ideas other people have as well. We're always wanting to progress and move forward. So with that, we'll talk about our future plans as well, with what next.
So for what we want to do next is we want to obviously develop our digital escape room Moodle page and create more, whether they are aligned to different modules or whether they can be used for other purposes. So some of the things we're thinking about was working with our practice partners in developing escape rooms for specific areas of practice out there, different skills they may need for specific healthcare environments. Using it for our belongingness page, which is to help with a field identity and give them more information about the role of the learning disability nurse, which could be adapted to the different year groups depending on the knowledge and skills that they've accumulated at that stage in their learning. So about game development, so trying out new things on Moodle H5P to develop again our digital literacy. We also considered using digital escape rooms for recruitment of staff and students to kind of give them some problem-based learning they need to solve in order to give them a little bit of a taste as to what we do. One of the biggest things we're looking at is writing for publication, because we've presented this at our university and now externally. This is something that we do want to write up and share our experiences out there in terms of how to create a digital escape room and the different applications that it could have. And another thing that we were discussing earlier was about further support for lecturers in interactive pedagogies and about the appropriate use of AI out there in helping us to develop our resources.
Okay, so just to touch on a bit of further information and literature, because we really acknowledge that kind of underpinning literature regarding the work that we have done, and that's kind of pre and post COVID, that literature on digital technologies, escape rooms, and that gamification, and the development of its use within teaching and learning, and acknowledging that actually it does really support that student engagement, as discussed in our kind of discussion and findings, and that kind of active learning and that student retention as well. And the evidence base, really, that's really spurred us on really to develop our own escape rooms, and we want to now spread the word to create those innovative approaches, and we have done across our institution at department, faculty and university-wide levels.
To be a little bit more specific with these post-COVID studies, because it is we realise escape rooms are very much a growing area. Lots of people are seeing the benefits, and there's always a need for more purposes. We looked at Macri, who highlighted the need to develop digital pedagogies, and also that millennials do enjoy this flexibility, and the focus on that learner-focused, learner-led experience. Now in nursing, we can't, students still have to meet certain requirements and platforms as a PSRB course. And whilst the groups for learning disability were relatively small, this is one way of providing that learner focus and individualised approach with some of our larger numbers, which for the last intake was over 700 for that first core module. So it's a way that students can engage and reflect on their own learning, and it still be something that's personalised and individual and fun with those large numbers. Rodriguez Ferrer was interesting because we recognise now through their research that escape rooms also have the power to tackle stigmatising and discriminatory attitudes. Their study was done in the realm of mental health, but we find similar attitudes for people with a learning disability. So we are wanting to respond to the call for further research to do this across fields within our core teaching. Jarvis and Tees also looked at a very, very similar realm as us. They looked at mental health and adult nursing in third year. So that was at the level 6 and at the end of their programme and getting prepared for the workforce. The difference is that we were focusing on upskilling staff as well as students with their digital learning technologies. That's a core focus of our work. And we've also got an understanding of, as Vicky mentioned earlier, as student demographics for learning disability can look a little bit different to other fields. Again, there's a lot of diversity. Many are first generation to university, may have those caring responsibilities with family members with a learning disability. Some students will need reasonable adjustments themselves because of their own disability support summaries because of anxiety or dyslexia. So these are just a few things, but our overall approach is if it's accessible for somebody who needs those reasonable adjustments, it's accessible for all students. As we're aware, we're the only learning disability nurses using escape rooms to improve staff and student confidence and competence with digital pedagogies. And this creative element, we feel, is emblematic of our approaches as learning disability nurses. So it transferred really well to the arena of higher education. And I think that led to that improvement in confidence. We're well placed as we're practicing advocating and being inclusive for marginalised groups and removing barriers to maximise potential for people in a person-centred and accessible way. And I think that's something that all nurse educators, all educators across all disciplines want to be able to do in this landscape. So we will share some references and resources as well, so that you can read what we've been reading, and we'll see those for a couple of seconds. And we'd just like to thank you so much for listening to our approach and our observations, and thank you for your time. It's been a pleasure.